Hello, I'm going to start streaming. Let's see how long this takes to go through here. Somehow I did not set up a live stream for tonight. It surprises me because I usually do that. Well, we'll see if people find it anyway. Yeah. I'll just say hello to all. Oh, there's somebody. Hello to Joe Mercado from San Diego. KG7JM. And best wishes to you too. That is good. Hello to all. That should be an exclamation point. There we go. And there's West Virginia. AB8AS. Demo Rest Autosport, Ohio. Bob Darlington. VE6HDH. Magic Man Fran. Brian in Surrey, BC. Hello. This should be turned off. And I think we've got enough light. I apologize. I thought I had put together a schedule for this week. I try to do that as soon as the last episode ends. I set up next week's. So it's on the schedule so that you can see it on the schedule. A lot of people start meeting before the scheduled time. So hello to all. Let's see, North Carolina from Bear Boz. Robert Brady, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And Les Jones needs an amp, yes. Derrik Trounce from KL4KF in Arizona. Is it starting to get warm in Arizona yet? Now that my wife and I have been vaccinated, I'm trying to persuade her that we need to go down to Quartzsite where her sister is and visit her sister, but she's, I don't know why. I mean, Quartzsite is a desert. We're not going down there to see the desert. We're going down there to see the people. So, hello, David Therault, Derrik Trounce, Les Jones, David Meyer, William Myers, Peter O, James Sims, Derrik Trounce, and Derek says, yes, it's getting warm in Arizona. I was in Arizona last year in mid-July to buy an airplane and then went down in August for 2 weeks to get some instruction in it. And oh my goodness, it was hot. It was very hot. You have to find a new place for your barometer. What's wrong with the barometer other than it's purely decorative? It doesn't work worth a darn. Los Alamos, New Mexico. Arizona City is nice. Is that Laverne, Texas? It wouldn't be Lavergne. I don't know how people pronounce it. I notice in Wyoming there is a city, town, spelled Dubois, but they pronounce it Du Bois. And there's one in Colorado called Buena Vista, but they're not going to pronounce it the Spanish way. They pronounce it Buena Vista. And interesting. Never heard back regarding putting 3 to 4 feed lines in a plastic drain pipe coming down from a 30-foot from a roof. Will this be okay? Yes, it is. It's fine. It's fine. I'm assuming the feed lines are coax. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Now, mind you, on the Ask Dave collection is getting bigger every week. I'm falling further and further behind. I was hoping to have heard back from the ARRL by today, but not yet, so I can't make an announcement. But Fred says, hi, Dave. Hello from Haltom City, Texas, from Larry. Spring in Sacramento, nice today. It was beautiful here today. It's 60 right now outside. I finally went outside and fixed my big IR, step-IR big IR antenna. The problem was simply a connection that had come loose in all the heat cool cycles over the winter. I just tightened up some connectors. There was a place where the ground strap was attached to the radial bonding plate that needed to be tightened up. That took a little doing, but I got it done, and so that is working very nicely now. And I did some measurements on it with my, what is that, Rig Expert, and it works very nicely. I have some adjustments that I need to do on the thing, but I don't know, I tried reading through how to do the adjustments and kind of looked at that and says, oh, this is going to be a project to do that. Okay, let's see. Kevin says he's in South Australia, VK5KEV, where it's probably, let's see, it's 6:50 p.m. here, so it's probably about that in the morning over there. He said he had a very hot summer there. Derrik Trounce, where's he from? Arizona City, okay. Yeah, it was a hot summer. It was 110 every day that I was there. We flew at dawn to try and avoid the heat. It was only 90 at dawn, but it would get up 110, 120 degrees. Let's see, Michael Grunberg loves the channel, just got his ticket on Monday, past Tech and General. Michael, congratulations to you, and I hope to see you on the air. I have a whole web page set up for a reference station. If you go to dcasler.com/reference. A reference station is just that. Here's a collection of stuff that works together, and I bought it. I bought all that stuff. So I've got the same power distribution block, I've got the same power supply, I've got the same radio, I've got the same antenna and everything, although I need to put that up now that snow is gone. But anyway, that may be helping. DK50NV says Germany is waving a hand. Well, hello. And good evening, RF Maniacs. Yes, and happy Easter to everyone here. Today is, what do they call it, Maundy Thursday? And I'm not familiar with the calendar. Being a Mormon, our only official holiday is the Sabbath, but we do celebrate Easter, Christmas, things like that, just because they are celebrated by so many other people too. And I know tomorrow's Good Friday, and then the Easter is Sunday. Now that's for the Western Church. The rule is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. Now the Eastern Church, it's the Sunday closest to the full moon after the vernal equinox. So they can be a week apart, and often are. Let's see. What's the lowest height I can mount a 10-meter inverted V? Have limited spaces to hang it. You're only going to find activity on 10 meters in the middle of the day, and then only when sunspots are good. It'll be coming more and more live over the next few years. But the lowest height, you want the inverted V to where the apex angle of the inverted V is a minimum of 90 degrees, better about 120 degrees. And then you want to get the ends up off the ground so people don't choke themselves on it. You know, hook them to a fence or something like that. You know, that's ideally the ideal height for a 10 meter for the apex is half wavelength, 5 meters, 15 feet. So it doesn't need to be terribly high to be a fairly good antenna. Okay, first time in a long time from Charles Layton. He's AA5KR. William Myers is also offering congratulations to Michael Grunberg. Optical Man Jeff just received his new ICOM 7300. Would you recommend a wide-range tuner for an AV680? I don't think you'll need a tuner at all for an AV680. And the tuner that's in the 7300 will tweak up any little problems that may be left. Now note that on the AV680, it's only going to give you 15 to 20 kilohertz on 80 meters. So pick your favorite net or whatever, or set it up for FT8 or something like that. But you're only going to get a small portion of it. I did a video about that recently, saying why can't my 80 meter dipole get the whole band? There are some situations that are a little bit of a problem in terms of efficiency, but they cause broader, they allow for broader bandwidth on 80. I mean, one way to cover all of 80 meters would be to build an 80 meter disc cone. It would only be 40 meters high or 120 feet high. So, and you'd need to have stock in the wire company because that's what it's going to take. So anyway, does anyone know if MFJ still has their isotropic radiator vertical for sale? Benjamin, I'm not sure what you're saying there. The isotropic antenna is an idealized theoretical antenna. There's no such thing as an isotropic radiator. So they have lots of verticals for sale. Let's see. Congrats on the new 7300. Yeah, you will love it. It's a wonderful radio. It seems like it somehow ought to be physically bigger. My 70 Yaesu FTDX 3000 is a pretty big radio, but not the 7300. It's pretty small. Okay, let's go down. My wife watches the Gross Anatomy TV show on Thursdays, so now I get to watch you live. Great. William, hello Dave, just passed my general license this past Saturday. Very good, William. Congratulations on your upgrade, and great to hear that and see you on the air. William Myers sends a something to put into the channel funds. William Myers KA8GIM sends $25. Thank you for getting me interested in amateur radio again. Well, you're certainly welcome. James, you really aren't late for the party at all. We officially start at 7, but we start out with a little bit of chit-chat prior to that period of time. And then Toys Are for Boys has sent Canadian 666. It says, thanks so much for the live stream. I'm getting back into radio. Bill McGavin says, thank you. Or he said, thank you to Bill McGavin. Let's see, my 8040 inverted coil trap is only below 1.5 to 1 between 3555 and 3575 with the IC 7300 tuner. Guy, that is not unusual. Not unusual. If you have a trapped dipole, it's going to be fairly high Q on the lower band. And like the MFJ 17754, which is an 80 is a 2040 trapped dipole, covers the whole 20 meter band, but only half of the 40 meter band. And 80 is just a hard band to cover. Okay. April Fool is tomorrow. I was thinking of doing a little April Fool. No, April Fool is today. I was thinking of years ago. I did about 4.5 years ago. I did a video called April. No, it was Fake Amateur Radio News, or FARN. And I went all out on that video. I talked about how ICOM and Ken, let's see, ICOM and Baofeng are getting together to make a radio called the iFang, and it's going to be called the Splatter because they've made it less expensive by eliminating all tuning. I was thinking doing for this year that to save you the trouble of wearing a pandemic mask while you're operating on your radio, there's a filter you can insert right at the radio that will filter out any viruses, and to be sure that your radio doesn't catch any viruses from somebody you talk to for the little computer, but never got to make that. Isotropic radiator theoretical point source, yes it is. In an antenna theory, yep. And YouTube didn't send me a reminder this week. Yeah, that was my fault. I failed to set up the live stream for this week. I'll fix that. As soon as I'm done with this one, I will set up next week's. Okay, any HF recommendations for areas with lots of lightning? Well, all antennas are subject to it. You approach that by dropping or putting in a ground rod right outside your station and attaching to the ground rod lightning arresters. I recommend the Alpha Delta. There are some other very good brands that you can get from like DX Engineering and so on. Bringing your coax down to the lightning arrestor and then bring the coax into the house to the radio. And then your radio is also grounded to that same ground rod. You will, of course, bond it to your utility ground rod with some number 6 stranded wire that that's bare, that you bury between the two of them. That's your best protection against lightning. Nothing is going to guarantee anything against a direct strike. A direct strike is just too unpredictable. Okay. Thank you. Found playing around on SDR Online a great tool. Good. Sunny Sandy, Utah. Vince, KJ7DOD. My parents are buried in Sandy, Utah, and that's not very far from where I have a sister there and another sister up in Bountiful. One in Murray and one in Bountiful. Okay. Hello from Boulder Hill. It is just too big to do with one antenna, yes. I've heard of some people lots of space putting up 2 different dipoles in different parts of the band. Yes, you can do that too. Sean McGrath, hello there. Flying into EGE tomorrow to pick up a Phenom 100 on Saturday back to Boston. Hope you're doing well and enjoying flying. W1SMM. Sean is a pilot of a commercial charter. Let's see, I'm trying to remember what it was he flies. It's pretty snazzy. It's not piston powered. I think it's turbine powered. And he does this for a shop that you charter rides for. He gave me ground school, which led me to pass my sport pilot written exam. I am still struggling with, I've gotten through, I spent an hour with my flight instructor on the last 20 feet from the ground down to about 2 feet to the ground, where you have to get yourself lined up to the runway even though there's a crosswind. Okay, and stay lined up to the runway. And I think I figured that out. Now I'm 2 feet away from my goal. I've got to get down and know what to do that last 2 feet. And I've had flight instructors say, well, you land. And I'm going, what's that? You know? Help me with that. So I may have to give you a call here, because my current flight instructor has helped me a great deal with the bit about how you use rudder into the wind and then the opposite rudder to keep the airplane lined up on the runway. And that worked pretty well, but I've been saying I need another session on the last 2 feet. And I don't know, I'm an engineer. I think like an engineer. I'm not an intuitive guy who can like stand in a basketball court and shoot a basket and have it hit, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm trying to do. I don't know what I'm trying to achieve. So we'll get it figured out. Can you get lightning over your ground wire? Well, ideally, if you look at the Motorola book on grounding of radio stations, you've got a ground loop all the way around the house, buried, and you've got ground rods around the house, and they're all connected together. The point is to keep everything at the same voltage level. So if you get a direct hit, the voltage level is going to rise, but everything in the building rises at the same rate and then settles down, so you don't get damage to the equipment. Can you use a director element in a phased array antenna setup for more gain? Well, that's kind of opposite. The phased array setup, all the elements radiate. In a director element, you're talking about passive elements, the reflector, the directors, and the driven element are passive. I suppose it's possible to build a phased array antenna and then put up some sort of a director. There was a very large radio station, I think it was WLS out of Cincinnati. They were going for ever higher power, and they were getting a lot of complaints from the Canadian government that they were totally obliterating a Canadian station. So they went out about 100 miles and put up a tower and fed it with the signal from the radio station, and then tweaked the phase on it to where they phased it out so there was a big hole in the direction of the Canadian radio station, and it make it work. Pilatus, that's what he was flying. Better just operate CW. You can't get COVID through the mic, right? Yeah. Let's see, from VK Land. Is that a loud clock I hear? Yeah, it's right there. I've been thinking I had to move it over there, on that wall over there. I just like the clock. It's huge. I mean, if you look at it up there, that's the clock. And I've got my lantern collection on top of that. That clock is, I picked that up of all places, your standard place for getting clocks, Harbor Freight Tools. Many, many years ago. I think it's about 15, 16, or 17 years old. And Harbor Freight, when they say Harbor Freight, what they're implying is that they're taking overages and stuff from people and selling them. And now as they put more stores out there, they're bringing in their own branding for stuff. But they had a stack of these clocks, and I picked that clock up for $60, something like that. It is a genuine wind-up clock. It will chime the quarter hours and the hour. But the problem is, once you wind the chime, there's no way to shut the thing off. So I've just had to not wind the chime and then just wind it. It's a 31-day clock. I've had it apart for cleaning once or twice. The clock was not ticking last week, yes, because it had stopped ticking and I thought I would wind it after the show. Can you recommend a Morse code decoder software app for Android? The problem with decoding Morse code automatically, I did my master's thesis on this, is that it is very difficult for a machine to decode something that was designed to be decoded by ear. Machines are much better at decoding things that are very specifically designed to be decoded by machine. The first machine that successfully used radio was teletype, using the Baudot-Murray code, which is what, ITU telegraphic alphabet number 2, number 1 being Morse. And it has a constant length for each character. Now, PSK31 has a different way of doing it, but it's extremely resistant to RF interference. The problem is you get a code like J, da-da-da-da. Well, now, what happens if that first dit gets dropped? You've got da-da-da, that's O. Okay, or you drop the last da, da-da-da, W. Do you see the difference? The code is not really designed for anything less than the intelligence, the wetware in there that we've got. Okay, yeah, I love the clock. It's an old school winding clock. Now, right here there's a GPS receiver right there. And this right here is a clock based on the GPS. So I've got I consider that a wind-up clock that's within 5 minutes is good time. And I want this GPS clock to be within milliseconds. So, I don't know. I'm fascinated by the subject of time. I spent quite a bit of time researching it at one point. I had a friend from church years ago, Dr. David W. Allen, who worked at NIST on the atomic clock and was an expert on time. He just told me he just got back from the International Consultative Committee on the definition of the second. And people get really serious about these things. And it's so many vibrations of a cesium atom. The clocks that are on GPS are not actually cesium, they're rubidium, because rubidium has better short-term stability than the cesium, which has better long-term stability. And there's all kinds of fun stuff. There are lots of different kinds of time. There is solar time. There is the GPS time is GPS UTC. UTC is actually around the world to go into the algorithm. The U.S. is unique in having 2 inputs, the Naval Observatory, which is GPS time, and then NIST up in Boulder, Colorado, which you get from WWV, and the 2 are kept extremely close together. And this is universal time with a sub-C, coordinated universal time. It is time that has a standard length second. Okay, and at the end of every year and halfway through the year if they need to, they will add or subtract a second so that astronomical time, which has to do with the rotations of the Earth, won't get too far out of whack. The Earth for years has been slowing down. Here recently it's been speeding up a little bit, and they may have to subtract a leap second from it instead of add a leap second. Anyway, GMT is not exactly the same as UTC. GMT is astronomical time and is an average. See, the problem with the Earth rotating is that it wobbles on its axis. We call this precession. The Earth wobbles on its axis. So 2 days, meaning rotate back to the same point under the sun. It's supposed to be 24 hours. That was the old definition of 24 hours. It's slightly different from that every day. So anyway, that's way off topic. I love talking about time. It's fun. Okay. Bought a collection of CQ magazines that has all the months from 48, 49, and 50. Oh, it was fascinating what they were doing. And they were discovering back then this new magical thing called coaxial cable. Because up until then, people used ladder line or home-built ladder line as feeders. Let's see, Felipe Lewis, thank you. $9.99 for channel revenue. Always enjoy your landing. Have you done a forward slip to landing yet? I've done slips, as you can do them either way. It's a great way to lose altitude without gaining a lot of speed. And basically, you just cross-control the airplane. The stick goes over here, and you push in the left rudder, and so you're trying to go right and left at the same time. And you end up going kind of sideways like this, and the airplane presents a huge, it's side to the air, and so it gets a lot of friction, really slows down. One of the things I'm going to have to learn is a slip to landing, but what I've been doing is very close to it. Instead of slipping to landing like this, what I'm doing is rotating the aircraft into the wind, which would normally cause the plane to turn, but giving it opposite rudder so it will continue to rotate and go straight right down the runway. And then if it's a real crosswind, you'll actually let that wheel hit the ground first and bring that airplane back over facing straight. Now you're going to have to, before you stop, get the rudder straight, because the rudder and the front wheel are controlled to each other. Okay, let's see. Soon you might see an advertisement for that clock in your monthly QST. The new ARRL CEO says he wants more ads, including Harbor Freight. Well, I've not seen that clock for sale in a long time, and I don't know how on earth they made that clock for $60. It's got Americanized lettering on it and everything like that. I think what happened is these were made for sale in the U.S. and then, I don't know, the contract fell through or something like that, and so they disposed of them. They're beautiful clocks. Let's see. What keyer do you use for CW? Okay, a keyer, you plug a key or paddle set into a keyer. The keyer makes the dits and das. So you hold the paddle to one side and you get dit, 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 dit. You hold the other side and you get da, 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 and you mix them up to get what you want. The keyer I use is inside the ICOM 7300. All modern radios come with keyers. Having to buy your own separate keyer went out 30 years ago. Okay. Now, I do have a J38. The one that I use that's a key. The one I use for this, the J38 is not the reference station key, because they're getting kind of hard to find. So this, which you can get from MFJ, it's the MFJ 566M, is a nice little key. It's very comfortable. It keys very nicely. It's got an aluminum base on it so that it doesn't squirt around the desk everywhere. And so that's what's listed as the station key. I do have a J38. The one that I use the one I grew up with was a JJ38, which is a Japanese version of the J38. And the difference is that instead of right in here where they have the pivots. In the Japanese one, there's actually bearings in there. Okay, the isotope using the clocks at WWV and WWVH, cesium-133. Okay, cesium is not a common metal. They've been looking at some newer clocks that are much steadier. Some of the new ones they're looking at, if it had started counting time at the beginning of the Big Bang, they'd be no more than 1 second off today. And you say, well, that's phenomenal accuracy. Of course, you run into the fact that with the Big Bang, you've got all these relativistic effects and so on. So, universe doesn't care about time. Well, actually, if you look at space-time, Einsteinian time, there are 4 dimensions in the universe. They're the 3 spatial dimensions plus time. And the thing about time is that when you get into relativistic effects, time gets dilated and weird and wonderful things happen. Sort of wish it was nits and not NIST, simply because one really has to be a serious nitpicker to get the standards correct. Yes, absolutely. Side slip, says James. Is that what I'm doing? Because I've got the aircraft pointed straight in the direction that I'm going. I'm going right down the center line of the aircraft. Turn on your radio. I want you in my log. Yeah, I need to do that. I got this antenna fixed now. Okay, but not the wingtip. Yeah, well, you'd have to be way over like this. I mean, we're talking somewhat like this. And then this wheel hits, and then this wheel comes over, and now that you're settled on the ground, you get your rudder straight, and you go down. And let's see, yeah, there's lots of good digital that can be done. Okay, we're at the point in the program where we need to go look at the mail. Let's see, we go over, click on the picture, click on ham radio answers. Okay, and the very first one is from John Erikson, KB0VK, 6 minutes ago. If 80 meters is wide, how can you pick the frequency you want to tune with a butternut, like an old butternut? Okay, the HF9V that I have, there is a coil on the thing, and you attach, there's a jumper that comes down here, and just by sliding that up and down, it's the bottom jumper, but sliding that up and down tells you which part of the 80 meter band you're going to work. And that's how that's tuned, and mine worked fine on that. This step IR, big IR antenna here that I've got, which is not part of the reference station. This is a pretty expensive antenna. They gave it to me, full disclosure, they gave it to me at a serious discount. But I did pay $1,000 for it, which is more than I would have paid for an AV640 or something like that. But it has a box down at the bottom of the antenna with a coil with relays in there. So if you want to work different parts of the 80 meter band, you can select different taps on the coil. So you can work the 80 meter band. Okay, so we'll save that. This is, oh my, this is from Dennis Perkinson, WW9T. Hi Dave, I have a question about element lengths on a homemade 6 element 2 meter FM Yagi antenna that I'm building. Boy, make sure you get that right, because with long boom antennas on VHF, spacing becomes critical, and so on. And if you start adding too many elements, you'll find that your gain goes down because the spacing is so critical on those. The boom is 1-inch PVC rigid conduit. PVC is plastic. Rigid conduit, and the elements are 3/8 diameter aluminum tubing. You must be planning on putting a lot of power through that thing. The design frequency is 147 using a hairpin match, fine. 6 coils of RG8 wrapped around the boom is an RF choke. I'm looking at 2 different online Yagi calculators to determine the element spacing and lengths. Designing for maximum gain, I'm getting different element lengths from the 2 calculators. Does not surprise me a bit. There's a lot of assumptions underneath those calculators that are not always made explicit. One calculator allows me to specify a PVC boom and isolated elements. The other one allows me to specify isolated elements, but I think it still assumes an aluminum boom. Okay. 0 diameter will still put a wire in there. Both calculators specify almost identical element spacings and gain, 9 dBd, but there is a difference of about 1 1/4 inch in element lengths between the 2 calculators. The key requirement for a Yagi-Uda antenna like that is that the director be shorter than the driven element and the reflector be longer than the driven element. You've got some leeway in there on doing that. Okay, the PVC calculator gives the shorter element length, director lengths between about 35.3 inches and D4 34.2 inches, the reflector 38, yeah. The length of the driven element, simple dipole, well, it's not really a simple dipole anymore because you've got all those other reactive elements in the near field. So it's not going to behave like a dipole because you've got these other elements in the near field. What the near field is, we're used to thinking far field. Okay, you got an antenna and over there, you got a strong signal. In the direct vicinity of all of the elements, you have electromagnetic mush. You've got a lot of things doing very complicated things, and the point where they sort themselves out into an identifiable pattern, that distance in there is called the near field. And the near field, in a Yagi antenna, the elements are definitely within the near field of the driven element. And so they're all affecting each other. Remember, first rule in antennas is everything affects everything. The length of the driven element is about the same for both. Do the reflector and director lengths make that much difference in performance? I'm going to say I don't think they do. I am also going to say that considering what you're doing, this is not a huge antenna. Just build it. In fact, build both of them and see what you think of it. You can get just 1-inch aluminum conduit, like from an electrical supply house, and use that for one of the antennas. If you want to really go strong, it is possible to get Schedule 40 aluminum conduit. That's what I'm using to hold out my hex beam. That's very strong. Build them both, do some testing, let us know how it works. I don't think that the distances are dramatically different, and think that you'll probably have success either way. Okay, this is from Mike Oswald, AA7MO, 9 hours ago. Dave, back to the flying thing for a moment. You were really working hard in your last video, but gaining ground, even if the gusty conditions were challenging. Attaches a video you might view. Okay, it's made by UND for new pilots, but has good points and may be helpful. I'm a new pilot. Finally, there are no perfect landings and few consistently good. I've made a few that make me want to hide in the cockpit while my passengers deplaned. You just keep at it. I told you my joke about Eastern versus American. Not sure if I'll make live stream tonight. This is our 49th anniversary, so his wife may want his attention tonight. Okay, I'm going to just, but I have not been feeling terribly well. My question, I am setting up an antenna mast by clamping a pipe to the side of my brick chimney. There are, if you go to the hardware store, there are specialized straps for doing exactly that. Okay, attaching a TV mast to a chimney. Brick chimney, and I have it bonded to an 8-foot ground with number 6. Wire, my station ground is connected to the buried bare number 6 copper that goes out to my well casing. Since I have no other bonding conductor other than the coax shield between the mast and the station, am I asking for ground loop issues? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I would put well, you've got an 8-foot ground rod, I assume, right outside your window, and you've got that ground rod bonded to your well casing. And you should be in pretty good shape. I don't see a ground issue for you there. If you find one, try moving cables around a little bit, changing the length of the cables, stuff like that. All the usual types of things, but Lou, I think you're fine. Okay, this one is from, let's see. Okay, we did a video about this situation. Lynn Wood Hieronymus lives back east in a mobile home / RV park, and he is the only lot that has no trees. And his landlord has not allowed him to put anything up. Landlord won't let him put up any antennas of any kind. So what I am thinking of to get past the objections, take down the Magmount antenna and order a mobile all-band HF antenna and put it on a Magmount on the antenna. Yes, that will work. You can do it with a screwdriver antenna, and they're all, that's a generic term, screwdriver. There are controllers for those and so on. MFJ has them. You can also do what are called ham sticks, where you can do a mag mount with a ham stick and put that up on your roof. I'm assuming, now you've probably got an aluminum roof. Normally those things that are mag mounts have got sort of a capacitive way of conducting to the steel roof of a car, but that same thing will conduct to the aluminum roof of a mobile home. If you just happen to have a steel roof, all the better. Ham sticks are also available from MFJ, or from Ham Sticks, or from DX Engineering. So there are lots of small antennas. Please notice that on one of these antennas, like a ham stick, you'll have a very narrow slice of band. So you're going to do all your operating right there. Now, if you get the screwdriver mount, it can be adjusted from inside the house. And there are some controllers that will do that adjustment automatically for you. And they're not very tall. So you could sort of, it would not be conspicuous at all. They're not cheap, but go look at MFJ at screwdriver antennas. The name comes from the fact that there's a long screw and a holder for it, and a motor turns the threaded rod in there up and down to tune it. Okay, and they do work. People do use them. It's a very common mobile antenna, so I think that would help. So take a look at that, Linwood, and we'll see how that goes. Okay. This next one is from Russell Bast Jr., 82BO. Alpha Delta 2 Bravo Oscar. Dave, can you make a video modeling the My Antennas 40 to 10 input halfway for me for all to see and email the results? The 49 to 1 balun is 4 feet from the ground. That's a little low. And the wire goes vertical for 40 feet and then horizontal 25. Trees are used to support the wire, making a beautiful inverted L. You need a counterpoise. You need a counterpoise. Okay, please note, the method of feeding is not going to affect the performance of the antenna. An end-fed dipole, an off-center-fed dipole, a center-fed dipole are all dipoles, and that's what they're going to act like. And you've got this thing set up as an end-fed inverted L, which is a venerable, time-honored antenna and should work really well. SWR curves are 1.5 for better for 40-20-15 and 1.5 to 1.8 in the tech portion of 10 meters. Well, I would say that you've got a very successful antenna. Enjoy it. You might try a little bit of a counterpoise. There is a thumb screw on the balun, the end-fed balun, where you connect your coax. There's also a little thumb screw, and you can use that to connect a piece of counterpoise. Try something like 10 feet. See how well that works. Try 20 feet. Move it around a little. And if it doesn't help at all, take it off. 1.5 to 1, you're not going to get much better than that because a dipole has a reactive component to it that a lot of people don't talk about. When you talk about dipoles, oh, you tap them in the center and they're 50 ohms. Well, no, they're not. They're 50 ohms if they're at exactly the right height, they're 50 ohms. But the reactance is not zero. The reactance is often as much as 35 ohms. The phase angle on these things can be as much as 45 degrees. And that's why you're seeing an SWR of 1.5, okay, on these antennas. You say or better, so I'm probably assuming it gets down to like 1.2 or something like that. Russell, it sounds to me like you've got a wonderful antenna. Get on the air, use it. Okay. This is from Bob Griffen, KL57BG. Hi, Dave. I have a good-sized piece of property with a lot of 100-foot tall Douglas firs. I am jealous. I'm considering erecting a Skyloop antenna. Okay. The Skyloop antenna, which is in the handbook and also in the antenna book, is a venerable antenna. Feed it with ladder line. I had one for a long time. I only was able to get it up 25 feet. If you can get it up 50, 60 feet, that'll be a whole different antenna. You will be better off running it vertical, if you can, rather than horizontal. And where you feed it will determine the polarization. Now that I've said all that, let's see what his question is. First, should I limit the total length to a full wavelength of 160 meters? Yes. Or would the antenna perform better with a longer length, say 900 feet? It'll perform, but you're going to get some weird patterns out of the thing. I'd keep it to the 558. I do have a tuner. You're going to need it. You're going to need a wide range tuner. Will my Rig Expert antenna analyzer work on a Skyloop antenna? Absolutely. It'll work on anything. I would recommend with those trees, if you can, look up curtain antenna. A curtain, like a window curtain. Okay, because you can hang that from those trees. And that's a phenomenal antenna. But you need the space for it. I'd put that loop up. I'd create either a delta loop, which just needs one high point, or a square loop, vertical. And it doesn't have to be square. It can be rectangular, okay? And you could get some phenomenal performance out of that, I'd say. Or if you want to go with the sky loop, which is a horizontal, feed it with ladder line. You're going to need to feed it with ladder line. And you're going to need to tune it. If you can put a tuner out away from the house, you can get them from LDG, from Yaesu, ICOM, so on. Because if you bring that ladder line into the house, the fact that it's out of tune and needs a wide range tuner means that that ladder line is going to be radiating, and you can get a lot of RF in the shack. The way I did mine was I ran the wire or coax out the shack to a 4-to-1 dipole at the feed point. Would have been better about a 9-to-1 dipole, but I didn't have one. Okay, this next one is from Ben, KE4SA BG. Would like to connect to ecolinker IRLP using my VHF UHF radio. Yes. Particularly trying to join the East Coast reflectors. I hear it broadcasting on one of my local repeaters, and I hear people throughout the country chatting. How do I connect to that? I also just received my ticket roughly a little over a month ago. So first of all, Ben, welcome to ham radio. And yes, you can do that. You're going to have to read up on IRLP. These are linked things. This is not the digital version. This isn't, DRM is DMR. DRM is Digital Rights Management. DMR or D-Star or System Fusion, you can do the same thing, except it's a different group of people. I don't know enough about IRLP except to say it works. Check it out on Wikipedia to get a little bit of a head start on it, and then you're going to have to talk to somebody who really knows a lot about it. It is a way to link repeaters. I had an unfortunate thing happen on the comment section. I was doing comments last night from about 8:30 to 11, going through comments and answering, which is another reason I haven't done a video. I just stacked up with comments, and I felt a need to answer some comments. This guy said he was a newbie and wondered if it were possible to talk to his repeater in such a way that it's linked to repeaters in other countries. And somebody got on there and said, no, dummy, you should know this, having studied for this. A repeater talks locally. Well, who's the dummy here? You can use repeaters to talk all over the world. You can use IRLP on FM. Yaesu has an FM technique called Wires X. And then there are the digital techniques, the DMR, the D-Star, and System Fusion that do it digitally. And you can talk to stations all over the world with this. So this guy was wondering whether something existed, and he was told it didn't. And I assured him that indeed it did exist, and he can do that. And that's what this guy would like to do. Unfortunately, I know, I guess, the most about DMR because I've done that. But you can do IRLP if there's a local repeater in your area, and it shows how it works. Basically, they're internet connected. If you know the call sign of the repeater, look it up on QRZ and contact the repeater owner and innocently and nicely ask, where can I learn more about IRLP? And there are websites devoted to this, and they can refer you to a good one. So Ben, I hope that helps. This next one is from Rick Myers KO4SA. And he says, just watched a video about the power pole connectors and really liked the wire stripper I used. Which one was it? Okay, the wire stripper. Let's go to screen and we'll go to my website, dcasler.com. And we're going to, I think I can do this with just a /Amazon. Yes? No? Yes. So dcasler.com/Amazon. These are things, by the way, this Baofeng upgraded GT5R radio, apparently we blew them away on this. Okay, this is the one right here. The Ideal 45092 Strip Master. This is the tool that I used for stripping wires. Okay, and I saw a guy at work using it. He was a DoD certified solderer, and he was fixing up some stuff that was needed for one of the pieces of equipment we sold the government. And he was using this tool, and I says, I gotta have one. Where do you get one of those? He told me where it was for sale in Boulder, and I went down and got one. I broke that one, so I bought another one. This is where you get, they're like cheap. Let's see. Oh, they don't have this one anymore. Consider these alternatives. Available from these sellers. Well, you'll have to look around. Here's one right here. This is the same thing. Buy new, $16.24. Okay, it's the same kind of wire stripper, but you can get them. They're wonderful. Believe me, I use mine all the time. So yes, go ahead and get one of those. Acreage in large trees are a ham dream. Absolutely. What is also a ham dream is that the previous owner was a ham and left a large tower. Rectangle is a square. Now, a square is a special case of a rectangle. Once had, which is a special case of a quadrilateral. Let's see, once had a full-size V on 160 fed with ladder line. That was on the ranch in New Mexico. Yeah. Okay, come on, guys. Have a 30-foot section of 45 feet above the ground for an end-fed half wave. Thinking of putting a trap at the end by wrapping wire around 4-inch diameter PVC pipe to try and get better bandwidth on 80. You're fighting physics, trying to get better bandwidth on 80. You are fighting physics. If you think you're getting better bandwidth on 80, you know, you could replace that 80 meter antenna by a 50 ohm resistor, like a dummy load, and get perfect bandwidth across the whole band. And that's the only way you're going to do it. Okay, Randy is here. Didn't the Evergreen intertie system talk from Mexico to Canada? I don't know. There are different intertie systems for DMR and so on. I know there are multiple ones out there. I've been wanting to build an end-fed halfway because of my lack of trees and space. Heard they pick up noise more than others. I don't know. Right now, the antenna that I have connected to the radio, I can either choose the step IR or with a flip of the switch, the end-fed half wave from my antennas. It's the end-fed half wave 8010. And that's a nice antenna. And the peak is only at 20 feet. So Use slopers, yeah. Larry Sanbo says hello from, or aloha from Oahu, the North Shore. He's a 12-meter spider beam pole to hold up the end of my sloper. Going to get 3, let's see, got here late. Newly upgraded to general. Ends will be a little higher than the center. That's not a problem. Not a problem. Have you decided on a headset for my 7300? I have been using the stock mic. So the headset that I've been using is my headset for doing audio work. This is a industry standard headset. And thanks to some of you, I learned you could get new ear pads for them, because the ear pads on this were shredded. They were so old. This is a Sony Studio Monitor headset. It is the MDR7506. If you can see that there, MDR7506. I'm not holding it very steady, am I? Okay, these are considered the standard studio monitor headset because they are designed to give you the most accurate representation of the music. And they have a very long cord too. The most accurate representation of the music. They don't do like the Beats headphones and try and make it sound cool and deep and all that. And you want the most accurate representation on your radio listening that you can get. Okay, it won't let me send link. Christopher, send it as something and then just put the word dot and then the number and then .com, you know, like that. Just spell it out. Sincerely yours, yes, we see you. Okay. What would be good height for an omnidirectional 5/8 wave up in the air? Assuming you're talking VHF, the answer is it doesn't matter. Height can get you over obstacles. If you have lots of tall trees in the area, lots of tall buildings and so on, height can get you over the top of that. Height can gain you a bit in length transmission. The curvature of the Earth isn't that huge, and you know, a person, if you're swimming in the ocean and your eyes are 3 inches above the water, you can see about 3 miles. But if you get up 50 feet out of the water, you can see for quite a few more miles. So, you know, it does help to get it a little high. Let's see, PL259 connector connected to the jacket shield of the feed line. Yes. Yes. Asking for grounding purposes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. What is the big IR selling for now? Oh, I haven't even looked. It's by the time it comes in parts, and you got to buy the parts, and you're looking at $2,500 by the time you get the things you need. I match both ends of 80 on my end-fed half-wave sloper by connecting, disconnecting the short wire jumper at the transformer just out the shack. Okay, that should probably help do that. I was really impressed with my antenna. I was not sure what I was getting myself into, but it really works well. It really works well. Okay, let's go back to a couple more questions, since there are 149 in the inbox. Okay, let's see, we answered that one. This one is, in a recent video, you explained what an antenna tuner does. Yes, I did. One of the most rambling videos I have ever created. It's very helpful. Raised a question. What does the matching of the feed line and antenna's resistance and impedance due to its effective radiation of the signal? Does it affect the pattern? No. Does it affect how much RF is actually radiated from the antenna? Yes. If you've got a mismatch, you develop a standing wave on the transmission line. Depending on the transmission line, you can, what happens in an antenna tuner, the power that is reflected back by an antenna is captured by the tuner and reflected right back at the antenna. So you've got this constant game of catch going on between the antenna and the tuner. And every time you're playing that catch, you're running that through a wire, and the ohmic losses in the wire create heat, and you lose power. And if the SWR is high, like 10 to 1, you can lose a substantial amount of power. There are charts on this in the antenna handbook. This is why when people have difficult to tune antennas, they'll use open wire line or window line. Think of it. The impedance is the ratio of the voltage to the current. So low impedance means lower voltage, therefore higher current. High impedance means higher voltage, therefore lower current. It is the current, not the voltage, the current that creates the heat. I squared times R, okay? You square the current, multiply it by the resistance, which is the ohmic resistance, not the characteristic impedance, the ohmic resistance. So people go to higher impedance feed lines. You've got less current, therefore less ohmic losses, okay? So if you've got a hard to feed antenna, like a sky loop, feed it with 450 or 600 ohm line, put a balance somewhere to get it back down to what your radio or antenna tuner needs to do. With a lot of antenna tuners have built-in balance. And wail away. And then that way, when the tuner and the antenna do their ping pong thing with the power, power not radiated comes back, is reflected again. Some of that is radiated, and then a little percentage is reflected back, which goes back, and some of that is radiated, and so on. So ideally, if you had superconductors in your wires, all of the power would be radiated. So you want to keep that lower. If you're going to go 150 feet to get to your HF antenna, I would not recommend RG8X. Go LMR 400 or RG213, okay? Or feed it with open wire line. Okay, I hope that helped. No, it does not affect the pattern at all, but it does affect how much power gets to the antenna. Okay, did I get this one here? This came just a minute ago from Ayman Azar. Says, Dave, please advise, can I use 75 ohm hardline to construct a magnetic loop? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely you can. Usually people who construct magnetic loops just use the whole coax. They short the inner and outer together. Now, you don't have to do that. To do a real true magnetic antenna, you want to create what's called an electrostatic shield. I don't know of any manufacturer that does that, but it is there for that sort of thing. Okay, this is from Joshua Riggins, KD5JDR. I'm on lesson 7.5 in one of the books. I want to know how you actually measure the radiated power from the end of the antenna. Okay, first of all, we're talking here about an electromagnetic theory that's often referred to as fields and waves. We're not talking Ohm's law. You get a watt meter. A watt meter measures current and voltage in a cable. Okay. That's a circuit theory kind of a device. Watt meters can't be at the very transmission point because that is radiated through the air. So how do I measure the watts at that point? I know of a signal strength meter, but does that give the actual watts produced? No. No, it does not. It gives you relative power. And besides which, you're measuring at the wrong point. Remember when I talked earlier in the program about near field versus far field? Far field is where the waves have organized themselves into a pattern. Near field, you are measuring total electromagnetic cacophony. It's a mess. It's a seething, bubbling, boiling soup of electromagnetic energy that as it gets further away from the antenna, finally you see your wave fronts organize. Okay, so if you're trying to see whether this point on the antenna radiates more than this point on the antenna, let's see, how do I phrase this? It's like asking a question that can't be answered. Sort of like quantum mechanics. You know, I want to know where this electron was at this time. Well, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle tells you you can't know. It's an unknowable. And while this is not an unknowable, because modeling takes a whole bunch of segments, measures what they produce, and then sums it all up and creates the far field through some really heavy mathematics. Okay? That's why all antenna modeling programs are based on a certain piece of electromagnetic modeling code that has been around for years and nobody really understands it anymore. So it's NEC, the something electromagnetic code. Anyway, that is a standard piece of code that is used intact, and people put interfaces on it, graphical interfaces, because it was written back like in the 50s, maybe even earlier, and you did your input with cards, and then you had to plot the output. Now, things like EasyNEC will do that for you. National Electromagnetic Code. It was created at the behest of the federal government, and there's NEC 2 and NEC 4. NEC 4 is better, but costs money for a license, like $150 for a license, whereas NEC 2 is free to the public. So EasyNEC uses NEC 2. And they take all of these little points and they add them up. But you can't go up to an antenna and measure, I get 5 watts out of here, 10 watts out of here, and so on. It's kind of an unmeasurable. And your signal strength meter isn't really giving you good information until you're really kind of getting out toward the start of the far field. So that was a very interesting question, actually. But you got to understand that when you're dealing with electromagnetic fields, you're not dealing with circuit theory. You are dealing with Ohm's law. Ohm's law applies. But in terms of impedance, phase angle, all that type, it's in a field, so it's additive, and all that sort of stuff like that. It's fun to look at, but gosh, I took my fields and waves class back when I was in the Air Force, so I'm going to estimate, 1978 that I took it. I've got the book for it right there. Got my old college textbooks up there. You can't ever let go of a college textbook, right? So anyway. Okay, I'm going to go back now. to the live stream. Oh, golly, we've got We the People added $5 to channel funds. Optical Man Jeff, as he does every week. Thank you. Dave can't wait for Thursday each week to get all the great information. Gigaparts has 450 ohm ladder line for $68.99 for 200 feet. Number 18, solid copper over steel. Okay. Yeah. Personally, I prefer to deal with stranded, but stranded's hard to get in ladder line. And the fact that it's copper over steel means it's strong. Okay. Need to do an antenna tuner transmatch part 2. Where does the tuned power go? Oh, it gets thrown back at the antenna. Big IR, step IR, back to them with my comments. Are you an EE? Yes, I have a master's in engineering. My bachelor's is in math, in analysis, and my master's science of engineering, and most of the work that I did was on modulation techniques and satellite, ground to satellite communications, and had to do some work in stochastic process stuff to understand how noise impacts communications. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Interestingly, it answered a question that had really bothered me about my religion. And when I saw this explained in the class, I went, aha, that's how God does it. Okay, so anyway, yes, I am a double E. My flight instructor is a double E. She's retired, a retired executive from HP, but her education was double E. So it's nice to be able to communicate using engineering language. Do I recommend the 7200? I recommend the 7300. I don't know anything about 7200. No, I don't have anything more on the news. James Clerk Maxwell was a groundbreaking engineer. He really understood what he did, but it took Heaviside to take James Clerk Maxwell's 21 equations and reduce them to 4. The thing that people had trouble with about Maxwell, besides trying to understand the math, was something called the displacement current. It was a current that kind of appeared out of nowhere to make things balance. Well, as it turns out, it's quite real. But the MFJ 2010 reference antenna is out of stock on DX Engineering until June. Oh, MFJ has been running behind because they've been hit by COVID like all the rest of us here. Maxwell's equations, your thoughts? Ringworming again. Buffering here too, almost like cable TV, broken record. It's COVID, frozen Dave. It looks like it's going again. Okay. Okay, I'm going to say 73s because we're over time. Have you used a separate speaker from the internal speaker, or what do you think about them? I use the internal speaker. Actually, I put on headphones. I don't really like ham radio over speakers. I like it via headphones. I can hear it much better. I recommend the DX10 from Yaesu. Seems like it's a nice radio. I've not seen it. Huge NRO-SATs and GeoOrbit are the most amazing wideband translators in existence. On that, I cannot confirm nor deny. Okay? It's pronounced James Clerk Maxwell. Actually, he went by his middle name, Clark. Should ARRI Immortals low power and cost new hams to build up the membership? The ARRL in the latest issue of QST says that they're looking at funding the $35 FCC fee for young, meaning teenage, hams, so they don't have to come up with that out of their pocket. Okay, and Wade Nee says he's just passed his Canadian Basic with honors, which I think gives you extra privileges. Okay, so I'm going to say 73 to everybody. We will see you next week at 7 p.m. and I'll set that one up right now. And I will also try to get some more videos in. I have stacks of paper here with ideas for videos. It's just the hardest part of making a video is the application of the seat of the pants to the seat of the chair. And then I can get you a good video. So 73 to all of you, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for all of your support and for making this channel a reality. Got some exciting things coming up, maybe with the ARL if we can ever get, there's lawyers involved, so you know. I think rumors about it have been spreading around because people are asking me questions that indicate they know what's going on. So, all right, so until we next meet, 73.